Hey everybody, I wanted to start off with an ADHD video as that's what we're getting into. So hopefully there is more of a type of
I put a call out in the Facebook group and it said, help! I'm doing a TEDx talk about ADHD and I have to memorize it, but I have ADHD. So about 173 kind strangers reached out and gave me tips and advice. But the most common thing that they said was, memorization is ableist and you have ADHD. Take your notes, woman. So they're here. I'm also like overconfident, so watch this. We're all in this together. I've had an interesting life, and by most metrics, a successful one. I've got great relationships, a loving family, I've traveled, I've earned 3 degrees, I own a successful business. I relate well to people, and I know I come across as an extremely confident person. And I am confident. I know that there are things in life that come easily to me. A big part of this is privilege. Another big part is that I was raised by feminist parents who, when I asked, do you think that I could do X, invariably answered, of course you can. On the other hand, there have always been things, easy things that anybody can do that I can't. This list includes, but is not limited to, knowing what food items we need from the grocery store and procuring those items. Walking through doorways without forgetting where I'm going and why. Or sitting through a boring math class or a staff meeting without the overwhelming urge to rip out my eyeballs, fling them at the speaker, and run from the room. So last year, at the age of 39, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I've learned a lot since then. The main thing that I've learned is that we're wrong about ADHD. And I was actually just told about 20 minutes ago. So I'm really happy that I'm here telling you about this today. It's a really real thing in my life. So if I'm sounding a bit emotional, that's why. So, sorry. The first problem with ADHD is the name, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. People with ADHD don't have a deficit of attention. We have too much attention and less ability to control it. Our minds are different. We have naturally lower levels of dopamine, and our brains are always on the hunt for more. My favorite ADHD-related story, and by favorite, I mean most ridiculous, happened just near here. My husband, angel that he is, devised a plan in which we would color code our family's Lego. He loves a plastic tub, and he found the perfect 35-liter tub to execute his plan. So when we were almost done the project, we realized we were one short, so I was like, I'll go get one. We went to the shop, I got the 35-liter tub. My son and I came straight home. Right? So later that night, my son Henry, I asked him to go out into the trunk of the car and find the tub. And I don't know if you've ever seen a 35-liter tub, but it's massive. Okay? So you need 2 hands to carry a 35-liter tub. It's like if you took like a liter of milk and multiplied it by 35. Yeah? So Henry comes back in and he's like, there's no tub in the car. Did I believe him? No, I didn't. I went to look, and there was no 35-liter tub in the car. That's fine, I thought. This kind of thing happens to me all the time. I'll just go back. I've obviously just forgotten it at the shop. So the next day, I drove back to the shop, and as luck would have it, the same man was working. I explained what happened, and he's like, no problem. I just have to check security footage so that I can get the time to my boss so that I can explain why I've given you this tub. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he goes, and he was gone for a while. And he came back and he was really looking embarrassed. And he said, I'm sorry. We have footage of you leaving, carrying the tub. So to be clear, I lost a 35-liter tub between the door of the shop and the car. Okay? So this is one of the ways that ADHD affects me. And this is funny, but living a life in which you are trying so hard not to make mistakes and mess up times and get things wrong is exhausting. I've always been a reader and a writer. I've got an honors degree in English and a master's degree in education. These are facts about me. Another fact about me is that I cried over my math homework almost every night as a kid. I never learned my times tables, and in fact, I failed math in grade 12. My mom was a principal, and my parents were very supportive, and when I needed to remember something, they found my mom on the way to help me do it. So multiple tests were an exquisite nightmare, but I've always been able to see connections in literature. Another thing that really helped me is an ability to kind of look at a job that needs to be done and decide exactly how much work I need to do to get the result that I want. And then I will do that much work and no more. So in other words, I had strategies that allowed me to be successful, particularly in postgraduate education. When I finished university, I went to teachers college and I became an English teacher. I've taught lots of kids with ADHD. And I was always really happy to support them in whatever way they needed. The problem is, when I was teaching, my understanding of ADHD was so limited, right? My teacher training taught me that students with ADHD might need to have information chunked so that they can understand it, that they might be, it might take them longer to do things, or they might be hyper. So to give them breaks or let them go for walks, let them play with a fidget toy, right? That if they took medication, they'd be able to focus like a normal student. But the thing is, ADHD is not just about focus. It's about our ability to regulate our brain so that we can get things done. This is a skill called executive function. And what I didn't realize is that those kids that I was teaching, because of their ADHD, they may have been overwhelmed and underwhelmed, overstimulated and understimulated. Their working memory might have been affected. They may have been super sensitive to criticism and rejection. They may have had trouble starting, finishing, and organizing tasks. All of these things are things that we do with our executive function. We all have difficulties with executive function, but those difficulties are much more numerous and more severe in people with ADHD. The other thing I learned is about 5 to 8% of the Australian population has ADHD. That's about 814,500 people. We do not grow out of it. And yet only about 1 in 10 adults with ADHD are getting treatment. Doctors Edward Hallowell and John Ratey are ADHD experts. Their book, ADHD 2.0, contains all of the latest and most cutting-edge research into ADHD. And here's how they define it. ADHD is a term that describes a way of being in the world. It's neither entirely an asset nor a disorder. It is an array of traits specific to a unique kind of mind. It can either become a distinct advantage or an abiding curse, depending on how it's managed. It's an array of traits specific to a unique kind of mind. And it's a real thing. My diagnosis happened completely by accident, and it was momentous. I had an appointment. I made an appointment with my brother's friend, who is not my brother's friend, my friend's brother, who's a GP. So I had had stomach problems for the last 10 years. In our first appointment, I explained my stomach problems. I told him about the anxiety that I was diagnosed with after having kids. And he said to me, "Can you describe it? Can you describe the anxiety?" And I said, "I get really overwhelmed and overstimulated." And so after a comprehensive assessment, which lasted a lot longer than 10 minutes, I finally blurted out, do you think I have ADHD or something? And he sent me a diagnostic test. Guys, I got like a really high score. So thank you. So then he referred me to a psychiatrist. And in his report, it said, Martha got 5 out of 6 on part A and 10 out of 12 on part B, and she missed one question altogether. I address privilege whenever I tell this story. I had access to a brilliant doctor who looked at my health holistically and understood me and listened to me and was empathetic. He referred me to a psychiatrist who understood ADHD in women. And he made sure that I got in to see that psychiatrist in a timely manner. And he still checks in on me to make sure that I'm doing okay. I acknowledge that this is not everyone's experience with doctors. The difficulty is a lot of the misconceptions that a lot of us have about ADHD, doctors can have too, right? And ADHD presents differently in everyone. And there's even bigger differences in the way that ADHD presents in women and girls. So just a really quick primer, there are 3 types of ADHD. ADHD inattentive type, ADHD hyperactive type, and ADHD combined type. I have combined type, which means that I show lots of symptoms, traits, of hyperactivity and inattention. ADD is not a thing. It has been removed from the diagnostic manual, so we're ADHD only zone, right? So one of the things about ADHD in women and girls is that the hyperactivity can present very differently. So it's much less likely to be in the body and much more likely to be in the mind. Our central nervous systems are more likely to be affected. So this looks like headaches and stomach aches and sleeplessness and anxiety. And young girls, because of the behavioral and societal standards that are placed on them at such a young age, they just mask them. They just mask these problems and hide them. We mask our symptoms out of shame, and we come up with strategies to work around them. And those strategies work until they don't, right? So a lot of women are diagnosed, like I was, with ADHD after they have kids. So after I had children, the demands placed on me exceeded my ability to work around them. And my doctor at the time said, when your strategies stop working and things fall apart, it's distressing. But there are so many things we can do for you. So, I wasn't a bad adult or a bad woman.
Adjunct orientation.
Or a bad mother.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to start an email thread.
It wasn't just a matter of trying harder.
For our hands-on experience. I know we talked about
This explained everything.
before that.
Underdiagnosis of ADHD in women is a feminist issue for lots of reasons. Outrageously, women were not even included in ADHD studies until the late 1990s. And it was 2002 before we had our own long-term study. I tried to look up celebrities who were 2002, and I didn't even know any of them. So this is what I'm saying. It was like yesterday, basically. So this lack of diagnosis and this lack of research affects families and communities and businesses in a big way. I'm lucky because I had a lovely childhood. I always knew I was rad. There were definitely things that I wasn't rad at, and there still are. But because of the support and the love and understanding that I got from my parents, those feelings that I still feel every day of shame, of feeling like I'm not good enough, and of feeling like I'm a burden could have become debilitating. And they do for lots of people with ADHD.
Good, how are you?
Good.
Having said all that, This is a happy story. I'm thrilled now that I know that I have ADHD. When my son Henry was diagnosed with ADHD last year, we made a cake to celebrate. Because those easy things that we struggle with, they're juxtaposed with magic and a unique ability to do hard things. Those paradoxical tendencies are what makes ADHD so complex. So my inability to focus is offset by periods of intense hyperfocus. The fact that I lose interest in things easily has transformed into entrepreneurialism. And I might struggle to start tasks sometimes, but I can also knock off a week's worth of work in an afternoon. So I'm not going to tell you all of the famous geniuses that have ADHD, but given the stats, there are about 10 of us in the room right now. ADHD brains and the humans attached to them can be frustrating for neurotypical people. But if you have access to one of these brains, you have access to a special gift. Ask them what they're good at. Don't freak out when they lose a 35-liter tub. And if you have a hard thing that needs doing, get them on board. Thank you.
I liked her presentation because it talks about ADHD in a way that it's like the strengths-based approach instead of how terrible it is to have a diagnosis of ADHD. And as social workers, a lot we have to work with, all types of diagnosis and let folks know it's not the end of the world, it's not the end of the line, that there's like resilience they can have. So that was a big piece. We're going to have the room next door loud again. Or is that somewhere else?
I did hear him speaking.
I know. Now I hear it. I guess we have a lot of term B classes. Maybe they do that on purpose. All right, so I also had the D2L set up here. I wanted to get a few of these directions for the assignments out. So the next one, oh yeah, that is all of them. So the next one isn't due until October 13th, but that's in 2 days. Holy, okay. So isn't that crazy? You think like, oh, that's next month. And I didn't even realize how quickly those things come up. The other one is our field observation assignment. So, oh yeah, look at that. Right into the syllabus. We're doing good today. Okay.
Wait, where'd you go?
Oh, for the syllabus? It's on there. It's probably the first document you get.
Can you go back to the main page?
Sure. Because this is the next thing I'm putting up too. So I'm skipping all that stuff. But it's the field observation presentation. And let's open a new one again because I'm already starting the assignment in that one. It is Intro to Social Work. Hello. You guys FaceTime?
Start this conversation right now. We're confusion.
How do you spell that?
BONFUSIO.
You're making me want to, about the paper or about?
About our grade.
Did you have something turned in late that I haven't looked at yet?
No, it's not that.
It wasn't even turned in like
So the thing,
Right, that's probably what
the
it is.
thing is, when midterms came out, the only grade that we had was the first paper, right?
Correct.
Right. So for me, I had a 90%. So I was confused as to why I have an 8. Like,
So it must have been the the next one that did come out. Did you
And I
have?
Not even that.
At 85%.
You didn't even have that
I didn't
today.
understand why I had to be.
No, it's not even that. The thing is, the next assignment that was due wasn't due until like, what, a week later? So for midterm, I should have 90%, right? No.
The midterm grades were actually due that Friday, and the assignment was also simultaneously due Thursday night. So it's more than likely. Are you guys freshman or sophomore?
I'm sorry.
Because midterm grades don't show up for anything. Like, don't freak out about it. If you're doing the work, you have nothing to worry about. Like, that's the most important thing.
But it's the difference when you got coaches that's looking.
Yeah,
They're
we're
like,
against
why is
it.
your grade?
So do they like kick you out or what?
Yeah,
What's
you
the?
will get kicked out.
Because we can start an email with them. If you've turned in your assignments, I'll be like, they got everything up and in on time.
Okay, I just don't want it to like midterms come around or like.
Because here's when they were all due. That first one was attendance, and
I didn't get
then
nothing for that. I don't know why I don't get anything for attendance.
and that's minuscule. But there was social work as a career paper, and then the values assignment. So that was due the 22nd, and then midterms were the 22nd. So it was likely. See, there's 5 ungraded. So there, you guys showed me. You're saying you turned it in there. It's probably right. You're one of those 5, aren't you?
Probably.
Okay.
Wait.
Okay.
To
Oh,
see?
well, yeah.
I can, but for their confidentiality, I'm not going to open it just because it's like 5
What
others.
if we
Oh,
turned around?
what's that?
What if we turned around?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sure it's no. If you guys turned it in, I'm sure it's you, and I'll look at them, and you're fine. If you want to just do an email, are they like saying you can't go to the next thing, or what's the?
It's not that we can't go. It's just the
They
fact
just give you a
that
hard
if we
time.
was to like get a bad grade,
Right,
but they
and you're not getting bad grades. Like honestly, turning it in is more than half the battle. That's the biggest piece. And if you have your stuff turned in, I'm very forgiving if it's late. The problem is when you guys are late, I also become late,
Yeah,
and
I
that's the
think I turned in that paper like 2 days ago.
right. And that's all that it is. It's been what, I guess, September 23rd. So now it has been 2.5 weeks. So yeah, I'm a little behind. And I can grade them for you.
Also, for this next essay, can you tell me if so far this format, like the way I got this laid out, just in case?
Sure. Yeah. Because I was just putting up the next one too. So the next one is the global social work paper. All you look up is the NASW, and then you look up the IFSW. You could do a page on each, like what's their mission, who do they serve, and the most fun part about that paper is looking up how much do you get paid. Look up a job and say like, what does it pay for that paper? Like what are job options? Are you both social work majors? Neither one of you is social work major?
I'm a psychology major.
Okay. So you can look up.
I want to double major in social work.
Yeah, that I always recommend. In undergrad, you should always do a double major because you're paying the same for any degree, and you can get 2 in that time.
Yeah.
And you might as well pay for 2. I got theology and psychology. The unfortunate thing for me is I can't do anything with either a theology degree or a psychology degree. When I finished, there was no jobs for me as a psychology major or a theology major. So I looked far and wide. I got offers for like $10 an hour to work with a psych major. I was like, no, I'm going back to school. Have you guys looked up jobs in your field also?
Mhm. Yeah, I had a job in my field.
Did you? What was it? Really? So do you not like it, or it was hard, or like that's why you went to school?
Yes, further my education in it. Because right now I'm just a full doctor, but I want to be an OBGYN.
So as a medical doctor. Okay. And then you can, I mean, as you can see, Dr. Nadine Burks incorporates both social work and medical studies with her,
They
like
don't have pre-med
here.
here, So I have to sit out,
Right.
but I hate it.
It's probably going to be hard. And then social work can get you an understanding of the social side of the medical field. You know what I mean? Like how you see people, the struggles you'll see them with.
People
And
are evil.
what's that? You said people are evil. You know? You never know.
That's how I see people. I see evil.
Right. So then you'll have to take the Hippocratic Oath too. Do you know that? Then you'll have to take the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, I think a lot.
Did you know that?
No.
So next assignment's visible.
I want some Chipotle.
Will they deliver it? Will they deliver here? You have to tell me your exact address.
Just Central State University.
Really? And they actually find you? Because I'll have it delivered here and I got to run outside. I say, meet me at the Clock Tower and I'll go find it.
Oh yeah, you gotta tell them what building you in.
Right.
I put foundation on them.
But a lot of them don't even know what the hell that is. That's why I'm just like,
I'll be glad though, because most people are starting to get a clear understanding, especially some DoorDashers will be here because
They're here all the
get
time.
ordered, yeah.
okay,
So,
right. Well, good. I'm glad you guys had your see if there's a video for you.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas? America, explain! Explain! What do you mean in Arkansas?
yeah, because we're confused.
So there's a lot of videos about I Am Confusion.
Mm,
Oh, is this a song?
No.
It looks like it. See? No.
you don't want to just play anything on YouTube. You don't know what
Okay. But sometimes it's interesting. Oh, it said the sound is messed up. Fix it. Sometimes you have to leave and then
So
come back
I
in.
am confusion.
Is that always the lyric they use for I Am Confusion? I Am Confusion sound effect?
I think you're going too deep. It's just a TikTok.
Oh, is it really? But
I
I want to
am
find
confusion.
I want to find the original TikTok video.
I think you was just on it.
You're on it.
Oh, I was? And it was the lady looking at the map? No. It's always her. Is she from like a different country?
I think it was just
Okay.
same.
Confusion.
You know what you should do today?
What's due today?
You should do today. You know what you should
Let you out right now.
Oh, no, you know what you should do? You should push the due date to Friday.
Oh, you mean the
Because I feel like you forgot about it. So we should-
current paper?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I always put the due dates in because I always remember.
But
to-
my thing is, I literally.
You guys traveling again?
Yeah.
Where
Are you?
going?
We
To
travel
Tuskegee,
every weekend.
Alabama on Friday.
Or at least have.
So while you travel, it's easiest to write your papers,
No, because the buses have terrible Wi-Fi and our.
and your hotspots are burned up.
Yes.
My phone's off.
That's why I was trying to like email you beforehand, but.
You want to know how much my phone bill is?
It's a lot.
Yeah, $268.
Do you think?
Oh yeah.
All
I'm
right.
responsible for everything.
Now, since you made me push back that one, I got to push back the field observation next. Ready?
God.
Oh, you didn't have to push it back.
No. No.
I had this bitch turned in tonight.
Okay, that's fine, but still.
That's hilarious. So wait, 29 now. What is that? Like another Friday? So Fridays are good for or Saturdays because you're traveling.
I feel like for me personally, it's Friday because we leave on Friday, and if I get it done before Friday, then that's when I know.
Ah, okay.
Oh, wrong computer.
All right. So we got the 15th and the 29th. They are like back to back. Would it be better to do it the 31st anyway? Because that'll give you the
What's the
whole
31st? Oh,
weekend. Well, as the 29th is, I believe, another Friday. But
Don't have nothing to do before we leave.
Well, that's what you
The
guys just
Thanksgiving
asked.
break.
You just asked.
I did.
You wanted it due tonight or whatever it was.
No,
Now
I
it's
think
due
my
for-
thing is I don't want no break over. I mean, I don't want no work over break.
I bet you were going to do that. I don't even know what the date is.
I think 26th of November.
Because here's our
You
syllabus.
probably
This,
gonna have midterms due by then.
oh, there's
You have
another
midterms?
grade. There is always 2 grades.
Do you
All
have a
right.
midterm?
No, because social work is mostly writing papers. So I stick with just presentations and
You are
papers.
the best. Wait, presentation. We had a presentation due?
That's the next one in 2 weeks. And we can go over that. See right here, right? Want me to read that or?
Yeah, because I can't see.
Because it sucks.
Oh, no, I can't see.
Okay. This is an easy one though. You can do it while you're, where do you travel to next?
Alabama.
Okay.
And
Wait,
guess
isn't
how
the
many
president going
performances
in?
we got?
What is it?
Guess how many performances we got?
4.
We got one. Girl, we got, okay, so we leave. I'll send him my itinerary. We leave
I
at
feel like
4
I
o'clock
saw
in
that.
the morning. on
Why?
Friday
Why?
To get there in time. Then when we get there, we got practice. Practice after lunch or breakfast.
Why don't you leave Thursday?
It's a lot of things we wonder, and it just never.
Like, is there certain days they don't want you to miss? They don't want you to miss a
They don't want
Thursday?
us to miss classes, but we do. We do.
Well, yeah.
But,
Okay. And you're both on the same team still.
we got a performance on
Dance.
Saturday, which is the game. And then Sunday, he got us performing on the Battle of the Bands. After the Battle of the Bands.
Okay.
Exactly my point. I ain't never heard of no Rockdale Battle of the Bands.
So I pushed it back till Friday, and if you've already done it, then you don't have to worry about it. You got till Friday. What's that? And here's the next one due, and I didn't want 2 Fridays in a row, so this is now due on Halloween. It's a field observation presentation. So all you do, sometime during the beginning of the semester, it ain't the beginning of the semester, students must expand their boundaries by putting themselves in a setting where they are a racial minority in a situation in which they are unfamiliar. I had to do this in my social work program too. And the point is we see people of every race, gender, religion, creed, whatever else you call it. Am I missing anything there? Like you see everybody as a social worker. Yes. So prior to participating, students are to identify common stereotypes and prejudices often associated with the population or group. So you go to Frisch's down here in Xenia and post up and
That's what it's thinking.
right, or Denny's or Chick-fil-A 3 miles away.
Maybe that.
Okay, that's what some people have done. Students attend by themselves. I'm actually okay if you go with somebody. But write your own stuff. Observe your feelings, reactions, experiences. Students are to identify stereotypes, prejudices, and differences in communication styles, cultures, which they observed or were recipient of. And the last sentence is, these identifications are to be written in outline format and presented to the class. So most people just make a
Yeah, found out.
For real? Here? Or is it here? So are they like, do they give you guys shit? Do they give you a hard time? Why the hell so? I mean, it would work fine, but I'm just curious.
I find it funny. We're on a college campus full of a lot of students that are definitely sexually active, that are grown, and they barely do sexual testing.
Oh, they don't. Okay.
And it's just like, that should be mandatory.
Like to check for syphilis, HIV, and
All of that. Everybody has.
herpes,
Everybody
HPV.
needs to get, they need to do at least, it needs to be mandatory in college to get tested at least once a month.
But wouldn't it be hard to get in there? Is it like confidential? Or you're just going to go show up and say, dude, I need a swab on my stuff because I want to make sure I got nothing.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
gonna get tested.
That would work, and you can give the observations of your whole process through. But ideally, it's like seeing how people. Well, you want to be medical doctor. That's why it's interesting to you, because I've never had a student say that place in particular, ever. You know what I mean? It's okay, but I've had to go to the Chick-fil-A, Xenia downtown, their hometown. You know, like wherever like I grew up in the city of Cincinnati, so for me to go on the University of Kentucky campus anywhere, it was like Appalachian folk and kind of country folk, and I grew up in the big inner city of Cincinnati. Are you all from Michigan or? So you can pick anywhere, and then yeah, you come and present that to the class. Like you can put your PowerPoint up on here, and then we share, and that is your deal.
Hopefully, when I come and present, it's only us here.
Oh, right,
Oh, we don't have to present, right?
right,
This
yeah,
is just something you turn in.
right. That's why it's like learning how to talk about it.
Yeah. So
Talk-
how are they gonna present?
So a lot of those who are on YouTube Live, I asked that they also film on YouTube Live and then turn in the link so it can be watched.
I would rather just come in here and do it.
Right.
And how long does this presentation come to?
I mean, just to cover, most people do like 5 slides, 6 slides. I can show you some. Let's
Well, I'm
see.
about to start today.
Right. You're going to go over there and say, I want you guys to give me a swab now.
Actually, yes, that's what I was planning on going
Okay.
to after this class.
I mean, when I was in college, I would frequently go, and it's good to stay safe, however you are, because you never know. Some would say,
Also, I find it ridiculous how I have to call and make an appointment when you're not even an actual doctor.
oh, they don't even have an MD there.
They have like a nurse, but
Oh, an NP.
all
Probably.
she can do is give you Advil, Tylenol, ice.
Really?
Tell you to sit down for a little bit. They don't perform the things that you would think they would perform.
So here's some.
Hold on, wait a minute.
I know you're like, I'm about to steal their whole PowerPoint
You
presentation.
know, Cap, I'm about to steal this.
I can tell.
I can't read the word.
I know.
Read the title.
You take a picture, then you can zoom on it. And
Wait. This is an example.
He occurs.
this is what somebody did last year. Yes.
Okay, wait. I'm just about to write out how they got their layout. You know,
Yeah.
each slide.
Yes, they just followed the syllabus anyway. I know sometimes it's hard to find the syllabus of the class, so people are like,
First slide.
she did feelings. We thought someone who was white would come up to us like we see in social media. We were kind of nervous about going, but we went out for my sweet mate's birthday. We thought we would get dirty looks, especially since I had my natural hair out when we went to eat. I already knew that Texas Roadhouse was majority white, but it's still kind of suspicious. Reactions. I thought their reactions would be staring at me and looking at me funny, as I was the only one in the group with my natural hair, and my sweet mate had hair done.
What if I had a picture of a condom on me?
Picture of a condom?
Yeah.
Like a pic. Oh, you mean on your PowerPoint?
Yeah.
You can put up whatever you want. I mean, don't make it like pornographic or whatever,
I
because
mean,
right.
Of course not.
Right.
That's something they can do on their own.
Right.
But I'm about to get my point across.
Like how to be safe and whatnot. Because they give. So when I was in college, they gave cheap old condoms out. Is that still the same deal? Like they're too small or they break or some crap like that. That's a good move then. Because I feel like you would be more protected if not. Experiences. My experiences was pleasant. It was like any other restaurant. The workers were polite and friendly. Had the manager come up to talk to us. It was busy. Had to wait over an hour to eat. Isn't that any of those stupid restaurants though?
I was about to say.
I hate those places. Waitress, it's almost better to DoorDash carry out because you like can then prepare on the way there. Waitress was super friendly, left a tip for her. I thought people at the restaurant would stereotype us as loud and ghetto, also stereotype us as rude, especially since we're teenagers, and Black woman as that. Prejudice that I was scared that they would expect me to act but tell me I was well behaved for a Black woman. Differences in communication styles and cultures. One thing is how Black people and white people talk. Another thing is how Black people and white people dress. how white people and black people grew up. So like your background.
Differences in communication style.
That's the last. Yeah, they just followed the example instructions exactly. So, not to jump ahead, but maybe you're already done with the assignment due tomorrow, Friday.
What you say?
Not to jump ahead, but maybe you're already done with the assignment due tomorrow or Friday for now.
I'm almost done, I'm not done yet. It's just-
I'm damn near done. I'm at page 3 and I still haven't spaced it out yet. Once I space it out, it'll hit like 7 pages.
See? And then you've seen the MD who is a trauma specialist, right? Dr. Nadine Burke.
Who's that?
She is somebody you will definitely want to know because she is now the Surgeon General of California.
Why is that someone I need to know? Oh, shit. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, okay, no, I see.
You've never seen this TED Talk either? It'll flag my YouTube. Let's see. I'll try it. Actually, this is the trick. You just turn it down. That noise for you ever watch TED Talks? So it's the noise that tells them it's copyrighted material.
TED Talks are very important, boring unless they have a purpose that I can.
I think you would like this one. I agree with you. I hate almost all TED Talks, but
So why are
I
you supposed to listen to it if you
let's see.
just take it down?
I thought it was on YouTube. Let's see here. Let's go to a different one. There it is. Isn't that YouTube? Damn it.
How about
Yes.
you go to YouTube and then search her name up?
Okay. She is the Surgeon General of California. That's kind of a big deal, isn't it? What does the Surgeon General do? Oh, there it is.
Surgery, probably. The boss of the surgery.
I feel like they give all of the recommendations. I show them to get liposuction and the old those little things you wear like Spanx, Shapermint. How many of those do they have now? That's the noise I had to skip right there. So you know that noise. It's like. So you guys have never seen her? I always try to show her, but then they block me.
I'm not watching TED Talk.
I'm watching
Discovered an
TED Talk.
exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed in very high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. And yet doctors today are not trained in routine screening or treatment. Now, the exposure I'm talking about is not a pesticide or packaging chemical. It's childhood trauma. Okay, what kind of trauma am I talking about here? I'm not talking about failing a test or losing a basketball game. I am talking about threats that are so severe or pervasive that they literally get under our skin and change our physiology. Things like abuse or neglect, or growing up with a parent who struggles with mental illness or substance dependence. Now, for a long time, I viewed these things the way I was made to view them, either as a social problem, refer to social services, or as a mental health problem, refer to mental health services. And then something happened to make me rethink my entire approach. When I finished my residency, I wanted to go someplace where I felt really needed, someplace where I could make a difference. So I came to work for California Pacific Medical Center, one of the best private hospitals in Northern California. And together, we opened a clinic in Bayview Hunters Point, one of the poorest, most underserved neighborhoods in San Francisco. Now, prior to that point, there had been only one pediatrician in all of Bayview to serve more than 10,000 children. So we hung a shingle and we were able to provide top quality care regardless of ability to pay. It was so cool. We targeted the typical health disparities: access to care, immunization rates, asthma hospitalization rates, and we hit all of our numbers. We felt very proud of ourselves. But then I started noticing a disturbing trend. A lot of kids being referred to me for ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But when I actually did a thorough history and physical, what I found was that for most of my patients, I couldn't make a diagnosis of ADHD. Most of the kids I was seeing had experienced such severe trauma that it felt like something else was going on. Somehow, I was missing something important. Now, before I did my rest, that if you're a doctor and you see 100 kids that all drink from the same well, and 98 of them develop diarrhea, you can go ahead and write that prescription for dose after dose after dose of antibiotics, or you can walk over and say, what the hell is in this well?
Good point.
So I began reading everything that I could get my hands on about how exposure to adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. And then one day, my colleague walked into my office and he said, Dr. Burke, have you seen this? In his hand was a copy of a research study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. That day changed my clinical practice and ultimately my career. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is something that everybody needs to know about. It was done by Dr. Vince Felitti at Kaiser and Dr. Bob Onda at the CDC, and together they asked 17,500 adults about their history of exposure to what they called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Those include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was they correlated these ACE scores against health outcomes. What they found was striking. Two things. Number one, ACEs are incredibly common. 67% of the population had at least one ACE, and 12.6%, 1 in 8, have 4 or more ACEs.
Have you guys heard of ACEs before?
I have.
So it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and most of us have had 1, 2, or 3, more than half. And those of us that have had more than 3 or 4, your likelihood of experiencing early death 20 years earlier, health problems and whatnot are exaggerated. She'll describe it here.
The second thing that they found was that there was a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the worse your health outcomes. For a person with an ACE score of 4 or more, their relative risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease was 2.5 times that of someone with an ACE score of 0. For hepatitis, it was also 2.5 times. It was 4.5 times. For suicidality, it was 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had triple the lifetime risk of lung cancer and 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, the #1 killer in the United States of America. Well, of course, this makes sense. You know, some people looked at this data and they said, come on, you have a rough childhood, you're more likely to drink and smoke and do all these things that are going to ruin your health. This isn't science. It's bad behavior. It turns out this is exactly where the science comes in. We now understand better than we ever have before how exposure to early adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. It affects areas like the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure and reward center of the brain that is implicated in substance dependence. It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for impulse control and executive function, a critical area for learning. And on MRI scans, we see measurable differences in the amygdala, the brain's fear response center. So there are real neurologic reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high cancer. The reason for this has to do with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the brain's
Can you
and
spell
body's
that?
stress response system that
Why can't
governs our fight or flight response. How does it work? Well, imagine you're walking in the forest and you see a bear. Immediately, your hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary, which sends a signal to your adrenal gland that says, release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. And so your heart starts to pound, your pupils dilate, your airways open up, and you are ready to either fight that bear or run from the bear. And that is wonderful if you're in a forest and there's a bear. But the problem is what happens when the bear comes home every night. And this system is activated over and over and over again. And it goes from being adaptive or life-saving to maladaptive or health-damaging. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing immune system, developing hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. So for me, this information threw my old training out the window because when we understand the mechanism of a disease, we know not only which pathways are disrupted, but how. Then as doctors, it is our job to use this science for prevention and treatment. That's what we do. So in San Francisco, we created the Center for Youth Wellness to prevent, screen, and heal the impacts of ACEs and toxic stress. We started simply with routine screening of every one of our kids at their regular physical, because I know that if my patient has an ACE score of 4, she's 2.5 times as likely to develop hepatitis or COPD. She's 4.5.
There's your STD test that you were talking about here. That's why she tests all the people she sees that have a high ACE score for that.
Times as likely to become depressed, and she's 12 times as likely to attempt to take her own life as my patient with 0 ACEs. I know that when she's in my exam room. For our patients who do screen positive, we have a multidisciplinary treatment team that works to reduce the dose of adversity and treat symptoms using best practices, including home visits, care coordination, mental health care, nutrition, holistic interventions, and yes, medication when necessary. But we also educate parents
Who's watching?
about the impact.
She was talking about the class over there.
Is that what it is?
That's what it's
It's Halloween
It don't
stuff?
sound like nothing educational.
It's not Dr. Nadine Burke Harris who says the nucleus accumbens. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris.
Impact of ACEs and toxic stress the same way you would for covering electrical outlets or lead poisoning. And we tailor the care of our asthmatics and our diabetics in a way that recognizes that they may need more aggressive treatment given the changes to their hormonal and immune systems.
Oh,
So
you
the other
guys
thing
ready
that
to go?
happens when you understand this science
Sorry,
is that you want to shout it from the rooftops. Because this isn't just
Everybody's
something you do
online.
for kids.
Jade, Tyra.
I figured the minute that everybody else
Jalen.
heard about this, it would be routine screening,
Yeah,
multidisciplinary treatment
He's-
teams. It would be
he's
a
faking
race
it.
to the most effective.
There's only
clinical
2
treatment.
actively watching. He signed in and then said it and left.
That did not happen. And that
Say,
was
we
a
know you're
huge
lying
learning
about
for me.
being in there. There's only 2
What
people
I
in there
thought
watching.
of simply best clinical practice, I now
Busted.
understand to be a movement. In the words of Dr. Robert Block, the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. And for a
Dang,
lot of people, that's a terrifying prospect.
that's a
The
big
scope and
statement.
scale of the problem seems so large that it feels overwhelming to think about how we might approach it. But for
No,
me,
you're not. No, you're
that's
not.
actually where the hope lies.
No, you're not.
Because when
Paying
we have
attention.
the right framework, when we recognize this to be a public health crisis, then we can begin
Here
to
you go.
use the right toolkit to come up with solutions. Pointing to HIV, the United States actually has quite a strong track record with addressing public health problems. But replicating those successes with ACEs and toxic stress is going to take determination and commitment. And when I look at what our nation's response has been so far, I wonder, why haven't we taken this more seriously? You know, at first, I thought that we marginalized the issue because it doesn't apply to us, right? That's an issue for those kids in those neighborhoods, which is weird because the data doesn't bear that out. The original ACEs study was done in a population that was 70% Caucasian, 70% college educated. But then, the more I talk to folks, I'm beginning to think that maybe I had it completely backwards. If I were to ask how many people in this room grew up with a family member who suffered from mental illness, I bet a few hands would go up. And then if I were to ask how many folks had a parent who maybe drank too much, or who really believed that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child,
Okay.
I bet a few more hands would
All right,
go up.
YouTube.
Even in this room, this is an issue that touches many of us. And I'm beginning to
Practice hard and bring
that we
home a win.
marginalize the issue because
Oh, we will bring home with some damn football players.
it's easier to think because
Very
we
much
look
fun.
at it.
Yeah, they having a little bit too much fun. They not playing.
Mm-hmm.
They actually playing.
Fortunately, scientific advances and
So-
frankly, economic realities
I thought you would like
make that
this.
option less viable.
I thought you would like this because she
The
is
science is clear.
legit.
Early adversity dramatically affects health across a lifetime. Today, we are beginning to understand how to interrupt the progression from early adversity to disease and early death. And 30 years from now, the child who has a high ACE score and whose behavioral symptoms go unrecognized, whose asthma management is not connected, and who goes on to develop high blood pressure and early heart disease or cancer will be just as anomalous as a 6-month mortality from HIV/AIDS. People will look at that situation and say, what the heck happened there? This is treatable. This is beatable. The single most important thing that we need today is the courage to look this problem in the face and say, this is real and this is all of us. I believe that we are the movement. Thank you.
I always cut out the applause too, as I feel like that's how they catch copyrighted video. I like your idea of going into the health clinic and seeing how they do. Right. I'm curious. So yeah, you can go in, I guess, undercover and ask for whatever you'd like and see how treatment is and be like the undercover there.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions about like
I wanted you to look at the layout.
oh right, okay. Let me end this because I don't see any questions on here. See y'all Thursday.